all those are hyperlinked within the report. You can click into them and read through them at your leisure. There will be other reports which come up on our website, and if you click into these, you'll be able to access everything there. And for additional information, you'll see that our fee scheme has been published. But I know that Helen is going to have a chat about fees in the next item, which is the audit letter. I'm happy to take any questions on anything there, if anybody's got anything.
Any questions on the progress report, colleagues? No, in which case we'll move straight on to the NHS timetable and fees letter.
Okay, so just to give a brief overview. So the letter was issued in February. The 4 main sections of the letter. So the proposed audit timetable for 23-24 accounts is now for sign off by the 15th of July 2024. And next year we'll be bringing it forward a month to the 15th of June 2025. I believe the draft accounts committee is on the 7th of May, and then the final accounts committee, I think we need to clarify the date on that one in due course. The second is a review of the 22-23 accounts and the findings of our auditors across NHS Wales. So there's a few matters in there which we highlight, but none really relevant to HIW. Bethan mentioned our fees. So our fee scheme for 23-24 has been published. So that will be 6.4% increase on last year's fee within the plan. Okay, we will confirm that within our audit plan at the next audit meeting. And then finally, some developments for 23-24 audit. So again, some not relevant for HIW, but just to highlight the final one with the data analytics AAA application. We've used that for many years within our audit of HIW now, and we've been speaking to Martin within our planning meetings with refining the data that goes into that. So that's all underway. Happy to take any questions on the content of the letter.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? It's a very detailed letter and a very transparent letter in terms of the position of Audit Wales. So I think it's really helpful for us to understand that, and also to see the matters that are recurring across the whole of NHS Wales in Appendix 1. So, colleagues, we are asked to note the Audit Wales progress report and to approve the NHS timetable and fees letter. And we look forward to the increasing timeliness of the accounts work.
Yeah.
I appreciate it will take us some years to get back to where we were, but it's good to see the steps are being put in place to increase the timeliness. Okay, so let's move on to 2.3, procurement compliance report. And Deborah, I think this is you.
It is, thank you, Chair. It's a relatively short report from us this time. The data covers the period from the 9th of February to today, obviously. So we've had 4 single quotation actions during this time, 3 single tender actions, 7 contract extensions, and 4 change control notices. We've only had 1 file note recorded during this time. We've included an appendices of each and every one of those that I've just mentioned, and I'm pleased to report that every one of them was a first submission from the department. As always, we always follow up any of these with the offer of training, and I will be arranging training from July following that point this morning. So I'll work with finance to publicise these sessions a bit more widely. And it's very short and sweet from me today, and that's it.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions for Deborah, who has, I think, frozen? Oh, you're back.
Oh,
That's
hello.
good.
Sorry, I froze, and so apologies. I don't know when you lost me.
No, we lost you just as you finished, so that was okay.
Oh, good, gosh. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to take any questions if there's anything.
Okay, colleagues, any questions for Deborah? Okay, nice.
So
John.
I've got a question for Lynn.
Okay, yes.
Not for Deborah, but when I read this paper, Lynn, and particularly Appendix 2, where are the dynamics in HEIs across Wales, and be very careful what I'm saying, I was rather bemused to read the first item, which says provision of research skills within pharmacy. It says who it was, it says the amount, and then it says no other provider available. Find that very strange. So what I would say is, for us as an organisation, we need to be very careful when we're looking at something as generic as that. And there may be a background I don't know about, but when I saw that, I thought, with us as a board facing a challenge when that comes up as single tender action, I was a little bit bemused by it.
Yeah.
Please.
I think it's a fair question if you obviously you've seen this summarised information. I'd need to go back and have a look at this one because obviously I don't recall the detail, but I have to say, certainly the single tender actions that I sign off are usually as a result of only one organisation having that specialist skill or expertise. So I'd need to go back and have a look at this one in detail, which I will do. Right. My initial reaction would be we probably need to be careful when we provide summary information, and I understand why it's summarised, but probably the detail may well explain.
And that may be fair, but when you read it on the basis of that, research skills.
Absolutely. Yeah. Deborah, you wanted to come in on that as well.
Yeah, very much to echo just what's being said, really. These documents are quite lengthy documents. Obviously, this is just a summary, but I will take on board what you've just mentioned and perhaps provide just a little expansion on this for future reference.
Thank you. And I think in this particular case, it would be useful just to have a follow-up email giving us the background for assurance, please.
And that's, I'm coming from a board perspective. But
I absolutely understand, John. I think it's an appropriate question.
Yep, I can arrange that.
I had a question really around the item on page 5. It's less of two there in relation to additional work going to freelance translators. And I just wondered whether we were using the most appropriate procurement processes to actually draw down translation work. Are we contracting with individual translators, or should we be thinking about a framework arrangement which gives the organisation the levels of flexibility it needs without having to report it as an exception here?
Yeah. Without looking at this in detail, I probably can't answer that. We are certainly looking at setting up a framework for a number of types of services that we are currently signing off through a single tender action. But from memory, I can't remember if the translation services are part of that or not.
And Deborah, you wanted to come in again?
Yes, translation services are very topical at the moment. There used to be a national procurement service framework which covered the whole of Wales and offered specific Welsh translation. Unfortunately, the organisation made a decision not to renew that framework, and we were not given the appropriate timescales to put one in place for NHS Wales. So this not only the framework non-renewal not only impacted NHS, it was also universities and every other public sector across Wales. So NWSSP are looking to take this forward as a framework, and we're in the planning stages at the moment. So I am working very carefully and closely with the team who'll be following up on this.
That's helpful to know, and we look forward to progress in this area. Any other comments or questions on this report? Okay, thank you so much, Deborah. And we look forward to seeing the ongoing training, reducing the number of things which perhaps don't need to be exceptions. Okay, so we are asked to note the report for assurance, and we so do. We move on now to item 2.4, counter fraud, and the progress report, please, Gareth.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. It is a brief report. It relates to the fourth quarter of the year, just about. It only goes up to the 25th of March due to the submission date for papers, but nothing significant has come in since then, so it is all but quarter four. In relation, the key points I'll pick out of it: promotion and awareness and educational activity. We have run our first corporate induction event, which is run remotely as an awareness session, available to all new starters and publicised by the workforce team. So that took place in February. We had 2 members of staff attend. We will be reissuing this sort of publicity around these via the workforce team again. We have another one coming up at the end of this month, so hopefully we might get some more people to take part in that. We have also started a rerun now of our bursary specific awareness session. So we have quite a few things lined up. We've already been to Swansea and Cardiff universities, as you can see from the report, and started on the new nursing cohorts there. That will continue now throughout the year. I can't provide you with the e-learning figures because I haven't been provided them myself yet, because we are sort of only 8 days into the first quarter. So I will be able to either share those with you as soon as I get them outside of committee, or I can bring them to the next meeting when I'll be providing the annual report for last year's work. So I don't mind which. In relation to prevention work, we've had 2 intelligence bulletins received from the Counter Fraud Authority. The first relating to an individual who is well known for public sector fraud, CV fraud, sickness fraud, that type of thing. Checks have been made, and that subject has not had any contact with HIW, which I'm pleased to say. Apologies for that. This report related to all of the organisations I cover, and I obviously failed to change that to HIW there, but that refers to HIW. The second bulletin, again, this was in relation to false invoices being sent to a number of NHS organisations from a fake company. Again, checks were made, and there's been no contact with HIW, and the cybersecurity team at the HCW have been informed, and they have put blocks on the rogue email addresses for all NHS Wales organisations. There's been 1 FPN that was issued again by the Counter Fraud Authority, and that was in relation to a bit of an old-fashioned sort of CEO or senior personnel request fraud is the way they term it, but social engineering really, where scammers use fake emails from purporting to be senior people from within the organisation. Again, we've had none of those have taken place within the organisation. Support material has been cascaded to finance staff, albeit that the real risk sits with accounts payable within shared service partnership, but that's been shared anyway. In relation to fraud risk, I intend to bring a very comprehensive report in relation to that at the Q2 meeting, to show that where we're at in regard to that with our fraud risk profile, which will come as an appendix in the closed session there. And in relation to the National Fraud Initiative, we are where we were last time. We're still waiting for some responses from the organisation in relation to payroll, the company director and trade credit and matches. But I don't envisage there's going to be any problems with those. It's just a question of waiting for the responses so that we can draw a line under them. The only other thing to mention are the referrals and investigations. They'll obviously, I'll update you further in the closed session later on, but we've had less than 5 of both of those. And then significant salary overpayments. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a new dashboard that has been introduced across NHS Wales, where we now automatically get fed significant salary overpayments, which have to be investigated by the fraud team. And I'm pleased to say that we have had no significant salary overpayments reported for HIW this quarter. Besides that, yeah, happy to take any questions on any of the above.
Thank you, Gareth. Are there any questions or comments on the counter fraud report? Very comprehensive. Lots of proactive action in there as well. Okay, thank you. We note the report for assurance and move on to 2.4.2, the approval of the counter fraud annual plan for the coming year.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't propose to actually present the report. I'll take it as read. It's a fairly lengthy document. It essentially highlights how we intend to meet the requirements that are set for us by the Counter Fraud Authority and how we will address those throughout the year. So it does go into various areas of work. I like to break those down into sort of education, prevention, and then obviously investigation. So I think the keynotes to take from it is it's a very similar report to last year. We have put an increase in days provision in there, which goes from 50 to 85. That's based on the work that we've done for the last 2 years, where we're hitting more than 85 days, I would say. But that's something that I've spoken to Glyn about, and we've kind of agreed upon for the future. That's kind of the days that we're finding we need a minimum of to provide the service we're providing at the moment. In relation to education and risk or prevention rather, those are the 2 key areas I think that I personally will be looking for improvement in this coming year. We are doing what we need to be doing, but obviously, as you've seen with regards to education, we need to increase the uptake of people taking part in our offerings. And with regards to prevention, I'm quite pleased with where we are with our risk profile, etc. But I have had meetings recently with Glyn and Martin in how we can sort of improve the proactivity in that area, really, and seeking out where there may be weaknesses within the processes within the organisation. So that's something that's ongoing between myself, Martin, and Glyn, really, for the future. But those are the key areas that I'll be focusing on in the coming year, obviously, along with everything else. But happy to take any questions in relation to the plan as a whole.
Thank you. Glyn, do you have any comments on the plan and how it meets our fraud risk profile, the particular fraud risk profile we have?
Yeah, so I mean, as Gareth mentioned, we've met and discussed the plan. So this is very much the end product in terms of I'm satisfied that in terms of the number of days. I think formally we're recognising that there's an increase in the number of days, and that in part reflects the fact that we probably need to be doing more proactive counter fraud work, recognising that our risk profile is different to other NHS bodies in Wales. Some of the work that we'll do with counter fraud this year will be looking at those specific risk areas and then either satisfying ourselves that got good controls in place or looking where we need to make improvements, really. But I'm happy that the plan sort of sets that in the right direction for the coming year.
Any questions or comments, colleagues? Donna?
Yes, a very small point, Chair, and yeah, thank you. The comprehensive plan, recognising that we do have a different risk profile. It was just on page 12. It talks about how you'll sort of evaluate the sort of counter fraud with our staff in terms of staff surveys, etc. And I just wondered how that was going to be integrated within our HEIW processes. To ensure that we do that and check that we are clear on that the messages are getting out there.
Yeah, we generally every year, Donna, send out a survey via email. It doesn't necessarily always go to all staff. It can go to different cohorts of staff, and it's a method we use really just to gain an understanding of who knows that we exist and how they know or they know the routes that they come to us on. Is pretty much a generic thing that's done throughout NHS Wales, essentially, just to test that sort of knowledge within the staff. So that actually that was intended to go out last quarter, but it will be going out in the very near future. And
we'll obviously have a report back on that.
Yeah.
Once it's completed. Thank you.
And it was good to see in the report for the last quarter that 2 people had actually attended training. I guess my question on an ongoing basis is, how do we encourage people to undertake this training, particularly in areas such as finance or around bursary?
So that I suppose first of all to say there's a number of different ways of accessing the training. So as well as the sort of induction, you've got the e-learning, and I know a number of people have sort of undertaken the e-learning that I've personally spoken to, myself as well. There are also counter fraud awareness sessions that have been arranged. So again, I think there were 3, Gareth, I can't remember, you may correct me. And again, we advertise these on the intranet, encourage staff to do it through the staff forum, which I think counter fraud came and presented an item to deans and deputies group recently. So there's a number of ways that we can do it. And I think as line managers, it's also incumbent on us to make sure that our staff have the right counter fraud training so that A, it protects them, and B, it protects the organisation. So I think it's a case of just trying to promote it in a number of different ways, recognising that this isn't currently a sort of a mandated training programme.
So it's actually worth us expanding the number of days of counter fraud involvement with a view to increasing the levels of take-up and awareness.
Yeah, and I think probably finding which ones best suit our staff as well in terms of accessing them.
Thank you. So the committee is asked to approve the plan, and we so do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gareth. Losses and special payments.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll take this one if I can. Thanks. This is the standing losses and special payment report that comes to each of the committees. Section 3 is the outline of the loss of special payments we have incurred this year and previous year, where there's a number outstanding. They are all either overpayment of salaries or ex gratia payments. The overpayment of salaries, as Gareth said, there's a new dashboard now which comes through my team, goes to Glyn and to the current fraud team to keep on top of these. Our intention is to fully recover all of these, and throughout history of HAW we have been successful in that, but we are still just over 2.5 thousand outstanding from last year, which we're recovering through a debt agency. The current cases we're working through, there's plans in places, or we have contact with the individuals to recover that. There's the ex gratia payments. They've all been through the terms remuneration in terms of service committee. So they all become, they're just here for reporting essentially, and they'll be included in the annual accounts that we're currently working on. So the current position, we are actively seeking to recover any that we can, and we'll keep the committee updated on progress.
Any questions for Martin? John?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Martin, which is helpful. But what it gives me is just a snapshot. What I don't get from this as an independent board member is whether we're in a worse or a better position. You know, the department in a situation where our overpayment of salaries getting much worse. I don't know. So my question essentially is, whilst the paper does talk about 5 cases outstanding from last year, still doesn't give me an indication what the trend is. So is our trend in terms of overpayment getting worse, or ex-gratia payments getting better or worse, etc.? That's so I just wonder, Chair, at some point, once this comes as a snapshot to the committee, for us in terms of assurance, I would like to see a trend, some trend data.
Absolutely, we can build the new dashboard does help with that a lot, and actually we can just take some of the charts now because it does show overpayments over a period of time. So actually we can amend this report just to give that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a very good dashboard actually, but across NHS Wales, so we'll incorporate that into you.
And I guess it will also tease out the reasons for the overpayment, which can then lead to people being helped with what they need to do.
Yeah, it gives reasons and departments and numbers, so it does sort of helps us to target with support we needed. Yeah. So we'll amend that for the future.
Okay. No further questions, so we note the report for information. We are a little ahead of time, but I am actually going to take us to a 5-minute break now. Because the next agenda item is quite large. So it's just coming up to 25 past. If we could be back for 1:30, please.
So are we live? Okay, thank you. And where are we recording meeting now? Fiona?
Yes, we're recording now.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. We move on to the next section of the meeting and to agenda item 2.6, the draft review of annual report, including annual governance statement. Mrs. David?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, David. Felly, dyma ein adolygiad blynyddol o datganiad llywodraethiant ar gyfer y 2023-2024. Pwrpas Apr yw cyflwyno drafft o'r datganiad hynny a gofyn am y farn a pwyllgor ar ddogfen. Ond mae'r ddogfen, wrth gwrs, amlinellu a'n canolbwyntio ar y gwaith llywodraethiant a wnaethon ni dros y flwyddyn diwethaf. Mae'r datganiad llywodraethiant yn rhan o adroddiad databolrwydd sydd wrth gwrs yn rhan o adroddiad blynyddol. Bwriad ydy byddwn ni'n cwblhau'r adroddiad erbyn mewn drafft yn mis Mehefin gyflwyno i'r llywodraeth diwedd mis Mehefin dechrau'n ysgolfenna a bod y ddogfen hynny'n derbyn cael ei ystyried yn yr AGM yn ysbeddi. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r pwyllgor sgolfau ystyried y ddogfen ac i roi adborth ar ei gyfer. Diolch yn fawr.
Colleagues, are there any comments or questions in the draft? And from Donna, John?
Yes, Chair. Thank you. A very helpful document, David, in terms of a statement.
Thank you.
Can I just make some points? Please correct me if I'm not sure in terms of timelines for some of these. So the first point is in terms of 2.1, role of the board, and there's a paragraph mid-page there about the changes in executive directors around the board.
Yes.
And there are blanks there, etc. Appreciate that there is there's date issues in terms of publication of these papers. My question is, what is the census point, or to what point does this report refer to? If it's the 31st of March, then there are things in that paragraph that need updating in terms of my understanding of exec changes. So I think we just need to check that one. The second point is in terms of 2.2, where it talks about committees of the board and what those committees have done. And then the next section, membership of committees. I was expecting to see, unless I've missed it, as part of our governance, I would like to think we've got a robust self-assessment process in place of the committees. And there's no mention in this document about the process that we use to reflect on the efficacy of our committees, the synergy between committees, if there's overlap, etc. So that notion of how we manage our committees, self-assess our committees, unless I'm wrong, I would have expected to have seen something in our governance statement on that, unless it's not part of the document. And just a point of accuracy, Chair, if I may, in terms of table 1, where we've got board members and membership and attendances and committees, etc. Ruth Hall was the lead until the 31st of January for research, and I think that has now been allocated to myself. I think that needs to be reflected, and I understand, this is an iterative document. I've spoken to Sarah about it. We've had a conversation, but just for note, those would be my points for accuracy and consideration by the board secretary.
Thank you, John. Really helpful points there.
Yeah, so Yeah, thanks, John. That's incredibly helpful. So I'll just go through those points very quickly. So with regards to the first point on timings, the guidance from Welsh Government is that obviously the document primarily about the financial year, but we should also include any material points arising after the end of the financial year. So it's slightly tricky there. With regards to the points we made about the recent changes to the exec, they will be incorporated in the next draft. It's just that emphasised by the time we should regards to the publication. We published a bit earlier because of the Easter holiday, so we will definitely include that. With regards to your point around self-assessment, I thought it was in there. So if we missed that, of course, it should be included. And I take a point with regards to how we avoid overlap and sort of piloting that. And with regards to the final point around the accuracy of the role being the champion, we'll of course include that. So thank you for highlighting.
Any points from you, Donna? Thank you. I've got a couple of drafting points, but we can take those outside of the meeting. Okay. In which case, we have discussed the content of the draft governance statement and provided some feedback. If there's any further feedback, I'm sure that that would be welcomed by the team. But what we have has confirmed that we have assurance that we can provide assurance to the board that a robust governance process was enacted for the period from the 1st of April 2023 to the 31st of March 2024. So we now move on to the corporate risk register, and over to you, Daniel.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, ar hyn o bryd mae'na cyfanswm o 9 risg ar o restr risg corfforaethol. O rheini mae 4 wedi asesu'n goch, 4 yn amber, 1 yn wyrdd, ac mae 1 risg wedi troi yn ddigwyddiad. O'r 4 risg sydd wedi cael ei asesu yn goch, mae 1 yn ymwneud â seithfed diogelwch. Mae 1 yn ymwneud â risg fod prifysgolion yn methu recriwtio ar gyfer y cyrsiau nyrsio iechyd meddwl. Mae 2 risg wedi asesu yn goch yn ymwneud gyda'r cynllun addysg a phrofiad ar gyfer 2025-26 yn yr ETP. Mae y risg rhif 9 yn ymwneud gyda'r risg fod cyllideb ar gyfer yr ETP yn parhau fod ar y lefel presennol neu bygysgedol slant cash. Mae y risg rhif 10 yn ymwneud gyda bod Llywodraeth Cymru yn oedi hyn cymeradwyo yr ETP ar gyfer 2025-26. Mae 1 risg wedi asesu yn wyrdd, yn ymwneud gyda WIMAT. Ac o ran y risg sydd wedi cael ei ystyried yn rwan yn ddigwyddiad, mae honno yn ymwneud gyda cymeradwyo'r ETP ar gyfer y blwyddyn cynt, sef yr ETP ar gyfer 2024-25 wrth gwrs yn mis Medi. Felly, da ni'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda bod y pwyllgor yn nodi yr adroddiad ac yn cymeradwyo bod y risg gwyrdd a'r risg yn ymwneud gyda werli asesyn ddigwyddiad y ddau yn dod ar restr os gwelwch yn dda.
Diolch, Dafydd. Colleagues, any comments or questions in relation to the risk register?
I ask Chair, in terms of risk 8, we can see what it's about, we can see what it's been done as of March. We're now in April, and therefore, do we have a definitive position with regards to mental health and the intakes? And whether that's impacted on that risk or not?
I'm not able to provide further detail, but obviously we can raise that with the team and get back to you by now.
I've not seen final numbers for it yet.
So I suppose what that raises is a question around timeliness and timing of preparation of the updates to this register and the meeting, and how do we actually get the most up-to-date position before this committee, so that we can take an informed view on the position, particularly in relation to red risks, I would suggest. Any points to raise, Donna? So we are asked to note the contents of this report for assurance, and to approve the removal of the one green risk, risk 7 from the corporate risk register, and to approve the removal of the one event, risk 6 from the corporate risk register. And we are agreed, colleagues? Okay, so let's move on to 2.8, the audit recommendation tracking, please, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, ar hyn o bryd, mae'r gyfanswm o 40 o argymhellion yn yr adroddiad. Mae 25 o'r argymhellion yn codi o adroddiadau gan yr archwilwyr mewnol. O'r rhain, mae 4 wedi cael eu setyn goch, 16 yn wyrdd a 5 yn awr. O ran y 4 sydd wedi asesu'n goch, mae rhain yn ymwneud gyda IR 35. A oedd yn bwysig pwysleisio pwyllgor bod waith sylweddol wedi cael ei wneud yn y meysydd yma, yn wneud gyda'r argymhellion hyn. Bod bynnag dydy'r gwaith ddim wedi cael ei cwblhau o ran y pwynt lle cwblhauwyd yr adroddiad. O ran yr adroddiad allanol, mae'na cyfanswm o 15 argymhellion. 2 yn cael eu setyn goch, 10 yn awr, 3 yn wyrdd. O ran argymhelliad A133, byddwch chi'n gweld bod ofyn yma am ystyried byr, grwpau'r gwaith ar gyfer mis Ebrill. Ac o ran A151B, byddwch chi'n gweld mae'r disgwyl bydd y gwaith yn gwblhau ac yn diwedd mis Mawrth, ond mae yna fater o amser gyda papur, felly bydd o'n goch sy'n yn cwblhau i'r adroddiad. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgol yna i'r pwyllgor i nodi'r adroddiad, nodi'r cynnydd amaeth dros y cyfnod, a hefyd bod y pwyllgor yn cymeradwyo bod yr argymhellion gwyrdd yn dod oddi ar y gofrestr tracio ysgol yma.
Diolch, David. So, colleagues, any comments or questions? So, Donna, please.
Yeah, thank you. Very detailed as always. Just to pick up, the reasons for being overdue on a couple of occasions seem to be resource capacity, particularly on some of the risks that were, sort of high priority. I just wondered if there was any comment from the team with regards to that and whether that is now addressed.
So I can pick up on the resource issues around the digital team. I know that they have been asked to do some additional work around the staff survey, which wasn't anticipated or expected, and given the urgency to complete that work, they were asked to prioritise that first. I'm also aware that they are doing some work for a piece of work around the non-pay agreement, which we've been asked to scope by Welsh Government, and again, that wasn't planned at this time, but given the urgency and importance around it, again, we felt that that was a priority. The digital solution, what we've also looked at is a workaround, if you like, that should be in place by the end of April, so that though it will the the digital solution that we want will be delayed. There is a workaround alternative that should be in place by the end of April.
Thank you for that. It's helpful.
John.
Chair, thank you. So I think it's right that I note that the accuracy of this report is much improved since the last I did raise it last time. However, can I just ask two points? First is with regards to IA 2208, which is around the IR 35 employment checks. So that is down as overdue, and yet it says that the work is underway and information should be available to all staff and therefore completed by the 1st of April. So I couldn't quite understand if April is the date and it's in place, what's the overdue bit?
So we published the reports a week before the committee. The papers are produced and we received the comments maybe 2 or 3 weeks before then. So it's correct as at the time that the paper's completed. So we don't have a timing issues.
Okay, so that has been resolved. That's not overdue.
I was I'm afraid I was not here last week, but I'll raise that check. But, once the paper's published, it can have stay quite quickly, and we always have a bit of timing issue. So okay, we're trying to make it as up to date as possible.
And the other thing, sorry.
Actually, respond to that. That was the issue that Peter mentioned about the solution, digital solution. An alternative will be available, and the full process will be available at a later date. But it's not in place yet, but it'll be shortly. I think was the response.
Yeah, so there are a number of recommendations around IR 35. Some of those have been completed. The ones that are overdue are around the digital solution, which is as a result of capacity within the digital team. So this is about producing a central database where we can easily access all of the IR 35 work in one place. Now, because of the delay in putting that solution in place, we've identified a workaround which should be in place by the end of April. So you're right, it will have passed the original deadline, but we should have that in place by the end of April. The digital solution that we want in place permanently will be sometime after that. It'll be subject to capacity within the digital team.
But this refers to guidance to staff, and it tells us that the guidance and the information is available to all staff by the 1st of April. That's what that's that particular chapter. I think we need to look at that, Chair. That's really important.
I think it's always going to be a challenge. We go through quality checks for our papers. These papers, in terms of the response, will be written 2 or 3 weeks before.
I get it.
So it's a challenge. Constructive come to be honest. Yes.
The only other thing I Chairman made, highly pedantic, but you slip into your first language in parts. Yes. So in parts you refer to my as opposed to me. So just note. So I can understand why, but there are a few there where it's my 24.
Apologies.
I had to.
Okay, I understand.
I can understand.
I suppose the committee is concerned that it's the high priority recommendations on a limited assurance report that are the ones that are delayed. We understand the reasons for it. I think we welcome the fact that there's an interim workaround being produced to cover the time gap between now and the digital solution being available. But we won't actually be signing off this is achieved until the full digital solution is actually in place, but accept that the risk is being managed in the meantime. Is that fair, colleagues? Thank you. So we note the report, we considered the progress made, and we have approved that the recommendations on the audit tracker that have been assessed as complete and given a green rating are withdrawn from the tracker. Yes, colleagues? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we move to the strategic risks and strategic risk control framework for 2024.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Hefyd. Felly papur i hon gofyn i pwyllgor ystyried a chymeradwyo risgiau strategol ynglŷn â'r fframwaith i reoli'r risgiau strategol ar gyfer y flwyddyn nesaf. Mae'r risgiau strategol yn nodi y risgiau sylfaenol i gyflawni nodau strategol sefydliad. Maent wedi cael ei amlynellu yn y tabl yn y rhan 3 o'r adroddiad. A o'n stoppa aelodau ein bod ni wedi ystyried y risg mewn ffurf drafft yn y cyfarfod neu'r sesiwn datblygu'r bwrdd nôl y mis Chwefror. Mae'r ddogfen wrth gwrs yn rhan allweddol o'r drafft. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r pwyllgor i nodi'r risgau strategol yn hyd â'r fframwaith rheoli risg a'i cefnogi nhw, a'i cymeradwyo nhw ar gyfer ystyriaeth gan y bwrdd mis Mai.
Colleagues, comments or questions? John?
Sorry, Chair. But in terms of the risk control framework, I wonder if colleagues could help me understand the rationale behind the RAG rating that's given to these risks, strategic risks. Because some are given green. When you read the gaps in the control or gaps in assurance, I can't quite work out why some are given green and some are given amber. Interpret amber as suggests that we're not actually on track. But when you read the narrative, I can't quite see what the difference is between that and the narrative associated with it. Now, it may not be for today, but I think I would appreciate some explanation behind how we attribute that RAG rating in this particular document.
Yeah, thank you. So the strategic risk control framework was considered by the executive team. You'll see that they've been allocated to each executive director who assessed those risks and came up with that score taking assessment. So I take your comments and we'll have a further consideration of that. Excellent.
And do you think the narrative needs to reflect what's that's in front of us then?
Yeah, we actually need a definition scoring mechanism. Any comments from you, Donna? So I note that the names of current executive members are actually allocated in the paper. I think this is one case where perhaps a job title might be more appropriate because clearly we've got some turnover in terms of executives.
So, very good time point to check.
And that takes me on to pages 7 to 8 in the appendix, where we've got the detail around organisational memory risk. And in that narrative, I would say that the turnover of independent members and the arrangements in respect of turnover independent members are absolutely clear. But as we know, we have some turnover in terms of executive, and the only comment in relation to executives is permanent appointments are in place in respect of executive team members. And I actually think that that is not sufficient detail. And I think we need to have a clear statement of what mechanisms are in place to address the potential loss of organisational memory in relation to executives. It's framework. So if we could take a look at that would be good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. No other comments on that report. So thank you for getting this to us so early in the year. I mean, that addresses something that came up in the last year, so it's good to have it before us. We have considered the strategic risk and strategic risk control framework, and we support that they be presented to board for approval with the additional information that we've asked for.
Thank you.
Right, so we move on to agenda item 2.10, evaluation of committee effectiveness. That
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, wrth gwrs, mae hwn yn dan waith, da ni'n neud yn blynyddol, a beth ni'n neud heddiw wedi cyflwyno canlyniadau hunan asesiad y pwyllgor o'i gwaith yn 2023-2024. Byddwch chi'n gweld o papur bod y canlyniadau ar y cyfan yn eithriadol o bositif. Cafwyd 239 o ymatebion cadarnhaol, dim ond 3 ymateb oedd yn negyddol. Roedd yna 22 ymateb nad yn cadarnhaol nac yn negyddol, ond ar y cyfan roedd rhaid i weld yn cael ei gyrru gan y ffaith bod yna newid yn aelodaeth y pwyllgor. Gan hynny, mae'r broses wedi arwain at creu 4 ardal neu meysydd o off-scrutiny, sy'n cynnwys gwaith o ran codi ymwybyddiaeth o waith pwyllgor, parhau i fereini y gwaith o asesu risg twyll sy'n benodol i agyg, pwysigrwydd o cydweithio'r agos gyda'r pwyllgor archwilio mwyn sicrhau bod e'n parchu ffiniau ddau bwyllgor o ran ei ffigwr sefydlog, ac yn olaf o ran amseriad cyfarfodydd o'r pwyllgor. Felly dwi'n gofyn hefyd sgwrs yn dda i'r pwyllgor trafod y canfyddiadau o'r asesiad, ac hefyd i ystyried os oes yna unrhyw sbelliadau arall y bydd ystyried ar gyfer gwella effeithiolrwydd y pwyllgor sgwrs yna.
Diolch, David. Colleagues, do we have any comments or questions in relation to our self-assessment? I'd remind colleagues that we do have some active discussion on how best to undertake self-assessments and whether there's any way of automating some of the inputs to enable us to perhaps have a more manageable way of dealing with this self-assessment. And in fact, we're meeting after this meeting to discuss this. Okay, no comments or questions. There is an action plan which draws together the matters which this committee has to consider in the coming year. And I would encourage colleagues to continue to be reflective about how these meetings work and not to wait for the annual self-assessment, but to feed in on how we can actually improve the operation of the committee and its fulfilment of its role. So, we have noted the findings and suggested actions. I'm not getting any immediate suggestions about any further improvements, but I've invited people to submit those on an ongoing basis. So thank you so much. Move on to 2.11, Draft Audit and Assurance Committee Annual Report. Another chunky item. David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly dyma'r adroddiad blynyddol arall. Wrth gwrs, mae'r adroddiad yma'n ystyried gwaith y pwyllgor dros y flwyddyn diwethaf. Papur i'w nodi a'i chymeradwyo i'r bwrdd ydy hon. Pwrpas yr adroddiad ydy amlinellu gwaith y Pwyllgor Swydd diwethaf ac i roi sicrhad i'r bwrdd bod y system o sicrwydd sy'n cael rhoi i le yn gweithredu'n effeithiol a da ni'n gwneud hynny drwy grynhoi gwaith y Pwyllgor dros y flwyddyn diwethaf. Mae'r adroddiad hefyd yn amlinellu gwaith y Pwyllgor dros y flwyddyn nesaf, felly mae'n gofyn bod y Pwyllgor yn ystyried y adroddiad, dwi'n nodi hi ac yn ei chymeradwy hi trwy'r nhw.
Diolch. Clearly, this is a transition year in that the committee was chaired previously by Jill for a majority of the year and then by myself for the last meeting. Both Jill and I had opportunities to feed it into the report, and we'd also like to thank Sarah for drafting it. Are there any comments, questions, suggestions for amendments? Identification of omissions, all welcome. Anything, colleagues? Donna?
Self-mute. Yes, no, very comprehensive document and thought it was really useful. And my only reflection is in the previous item, we were talking about how we raise awareness of the committee to the wider organisation, etc. And I think this does that very well.
Thank you, Donna. Much appreciated. So we have duly considered the draft annual report and we approve it for on transmission. So we now move on to item 2.12, Information Governance and Information Management Key Issues Report.
Felly, diolch yn iawn Cadeirydd. Felly, papur i'w nodi ydy hyn. Mae'n crynhoi'r gwaith a cyfnodion o'r cyfarfod o'r Pwyllgor Llywodraethiant Gwybodaeth a rheoli gwybodaeth a gynhaliwyd ar unfed ar 20 o fis Mawrth. Na i ddim yn trwy'r ddogfen yn fanwl, ond i cadarnhau yn ystod y cyfnod yr adroddiad roedd yna 8 gyfyniad am gwybodaeth pryd ac fe wnaethon ni ymateb yn bob un o'r 8 o fewn yr amser sy'n cael ei bennu gan y deddfwriaeth. Felly papur i'w nodi i edrych sgwrs.
Please, any questions or comments on this paper for note? I note the breach in relation to Orbit's 360 data loss. It says that all data was recovered. Was any data transferred to people that shouldn't have had access to it? Or was it simply a loss of data?
I would need to get back to you, I understand it's a loss of data. I'd need to get back to you.
I know there's also a reference to the mandatory information governance training. I've recently undertaken that, and I think I have shared some comments on the nature of that. I think I'd probably like to give some specific feedback on it, because training has to be appropriate and proportionate. And I think there's some questions around the design of that training in order to make it as effective as possible. But I will give you that feedback.
Thank you, Lord.
Okay, so we note the contents of this report for assurance. There are no matters for information. I have not been notified on any other business in advance of the meeting. So we move on to agree the date of next meeting is Thursday, the 9th of May, 2024. And again, it will be a hybrid meeting with a hybrid meeting on Teams and in the conference room. And I now at this point need to state that in accordance with the provision of section 1(2) of the Public Bodies Admissions to Meeting Act 1960, it shall be resolved that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the latter part of the meeting on the grounds that it would be prejudicial to the public interest due to the confidential nature of the business transacted. This section of the meeting is to be held in private session. Okay. Question?
Yes.